The Dalai Lama and China are about to clash. The Chinese military uses lasers on Germany's armed forces. And is the US taking its farmland back from the CCP? That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. You probably know that companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens? Maybe hundreds? Most of which you've never heard of, and you have no idea what they're doing with it. Incogni helps stop them. I'll explain more at the end. Germany has accused China of laser targeting a reconnaissance aircraft during an EU mission. Every day we grow closer to living in Contra. Quick, someone hit up, up, down, down, left, right, B-A, start. At the time, Germany was partaking in an EU freedom of navigation operation in the Red Sea amid attacks by the Iran-backed Houthis, and was approaching a Chinese frigate. Whether the plane was targeted by a laser weapon or a laser guidance system is unclear. But this isn't the first time that China has done this. Newsweek has put together a map of all the places where China is accused of targeting rivals with lasers. Wow, it's almost like China is run by a Marxist-Leninist state that wants to destroy the West. Go figure. That's a message the EU might actually be getting. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen had plenty to say about the CCP before a bilateral summit. None of it good. Mainly she complained about China flooding the global market with cheap goods to undercut competitors. But she also said that China is de facto enabling Russia's war economy. We cannot accept this. So it seems the CCP has successfully burned bridges to both the US and Europe, which, considering the quality of Chinese construction, is about what I'd expect. This transparent hostility is a big part of the reason China's economy is still on life support. Specifically, China's manufacturing activity has contracted for the third month in a row amid deflation woes. This is devastating. The real estate market, which once made up a third of China's GDP, is gone. There is no real high-tech sector. Chinese people are desperately hoarding money for fear of an impending collapse, so they aren't spending it. The CCP has no other plan for their economy other than mass manufacturing and dumping the goods on the global market. But as we just saw with the EU, no one wants to buy all that cheap Chinese crap. So, if manufacturing is contracting, the CCP may be screwed. But don't worry, the great meritocracy that is the CCP is focused on what truly matters, controlling the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama just turned 90, so rather grimly, people have been talking about what happens when he dies. Traditionally, the number 2 position in Tibetan Buddhism, the Panchen Lama, seeks out the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama as a small child. But, I kid you not, China has passed a law that says you can't reincarnate without government permission. Obviously, the CCP's plan is to install their own Dalai Lama when the current one dies, because that will obviously make the Tibetan people love them. They're already well on their way. Remember the Panchen Lama I mentioned, the one whose job it is to find the next Dalai Lama? In 1989, the Panchen Lama died. Years later, the Dalai Lama recognized this 6-year-old boy as his reincarnation. But the boy and his family disappeared just days later into Chinese custody and haven't been heard from since. The Chinese Communist Party then chose its own Panchen Lama, who was widely rejected by Tibetans. Since a core tenet of Buddhism is not kidnapping and possibly murdering their spiritual leaders, kind of day one stuff. And this new Panchen Lama even met with Xi Jinping last month and pledged fealty to the CCP. So, what happens when the current Dalai Lama dies? Previously, he floated the idea that he would be the final Dalai Lama, but apparently he changed his mind after discussions with senior spiritual leaders and appeals from the broader Tibetan public. In a video played last Wednesday during a prayer session, the Dalai Lama said that the Gaiden Phodrang Trust, which manages his affairs, will be overseeing the search for his reincarnation, which sounds like it'd make for an incredible reality show, but I digress. He also said that no one else has any such authority to interfere with this matter. And so the CCP is interfering with this matter. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said that Tibetan Buddhism was born in China and is a faith with Chinese characteristics, and also that the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, the Panchen Lama, and other great Buddhist figures must be chosen by drawing lots from a golden urn and approved by the central government. So, godless communists actually do want to be involved with religion? Good to know. Very likely this means in the next few years we will have 2 Dalai Lamas. The good news is that in 2020, the US passed the Tibetan Policy and Support Act, which will pursue international coalitions to ensure that the next Dalai Lama is appointed solely by the Tibetan Buddhist faith community. Hopefully, the CCP cares enough about its bad economy and global image to avoid repeating this kind of interference, but I wouldn't count on it, since terrible, reckless decisions are the #1 thing that gets reincarnated in the CCP. And after the break, President Trump is trying to save U.S. farms from China. Welcome back. According to a Daily Caller exclusive story, USAID quietly sent thousands of viruses to Chinese military-linked biolabs. Okay. This was part of a project called PREDICT, a public health program funded by USAID to the tune of $210 million. Steered by UC Davis, the idea was to collect viral samples from around the world. But when funding dried up, they found themselves without long-term storage facilities or plans. And we've seen how great China is at storing viruses. In fact, field work was halted in September 2019, just months before the pandemic began. And the program ended altogether in March 2020, the height of the pandemic lockdowns. The Daily Caller obtained documents showing that over a 10-year period, thousands of viral samples were sent to Chinese labs, even though there was no formal agreement in place. Included among these labs were the Institute of Microbiology, Chinese Academy of Sciences, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of Guangdong Province, and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I have no more tears left. The documents also show that USAID paid for 11,000 virus samples to be brought from Yunnan Province to Wuhan. Yunnan, by the way, is where we find some of COVID-19's closest viral relatives. And USAID sent them to where COVID came from. Wow. And the cherry on top? There was no apparent plan in place to ensure the samples weren't used for bioweapons, something the CCP is actively pursuing. I'd say we're living in idiocracy, but no one in that movie was this stupid. These internal documents were obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by U.S. Right to Know, which is a nonprofit newsroom and public health research group. The Trump administration pulling USAID funding may have gutted some useful programs, but I think the hundreds of millions of Americans who suffered from COVID won't miss this program. The Trump administration is moving decisively to block China from weaponizing American farmland. And even better, it looks like this has some bipartisan support in Congress. On Tuesday morning, the U.S. Department of Agriculture released its National Farm Security Action Plan, which includes legislative and executive reforms such as banning Chinese nationals from obtaining American farmland and assessing who holds land near military bases. This should have always been the law, but hey, it's like they say, the best time to stop being stupid was yesterday, but the second best is today. 4 Chinese nationals, 3 men and a woman, have been detained in Greece for photographing fighter jets. You know, I wonder if things like this could be why it's a problem for Chinese nationals to own farmland near U.S. military bases. But we're not done with Chinese espionage yet. The U.S. is seeking the extradition of a Chinese man held in Italy accused of hacking to steal COVID-19 vaccine research. The man, Xu Ziwei, is accused of working for China's Ministry of State Security, or MSS, to target U.S.-based universities, immunologists, and virologists researching COVID-19 back in 2020. That's according to an indictment unsealed on Tuesday by the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas. The The indictment also accused another person, Zhang Yu, who is now in China, of helping out, and I don't think the CCP will extradite him to the US. While the names of the universities went unnamed in the indictment, the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston admitted that it was one of the victims, probably as a reminder that this is what happens when you mess with Texas. The arrest is a major victory for the FBI because while they frequently go after hackers accused of working for foreign spy adversaries, they rarely catch one from China. But this is just the latest in a long string of high-profile espionage cases involving China. And it's part of a growing trend of the world being fed up with everything China's selling. Now, I've got a video I want to show you that you're going to love, but first, this episode is sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online or use apps on your phone, there are tons of companies that collect your personal data. I'm talking name, phone number, social security number, home address, and more. When I signed up for Incogni 3 years ago, I discovered there were dozens of data brokers that potentially had my private information without my permission. This was terrifying. So what did I do? I've been getting as many of these companies as possible to delete my data from their systems. I did it using Incogni, and you can too. Incogni has already gotten my details removed from 653 of these data brokers who've collected my info, and I didn't have to do anything after signing up. Incogni just handles it. And now you can help get your family get rid of their data on the internet too with Incogni's new Family Unlimited plan. It gives you access to Incogni's custom removals feature, where if you find a people search site that's giving out your info, paste that link into Incogni and Incogni's agents will get rid of it for you. So get Incogni and reclaim your own data. Go to incogni.com/uncensored and use the code uncensored to get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. And here's another one of my videos YouTube's algorithm thinks you'll like. Who are you to disagree with the algorithm? Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.